So, I have a couch, and it is kind of empty. What's worse is, a lot of my friends, when they come over and they sit on the couch, they would actually hit their head on the back counter there. So I figured the best way to fix both problems is to simply design and print some cabinets for this area. Here is how it went. After some brief measurements, I came up with this design. There's two cabinets divided by each of the brackets that were holding up the entire countertop. On the back, I have labeled where they're supposed to go. Right meaning to the right of me, looking directly at it, and left meaning to the left of me. Then, without thinking too much, I started to print all the pieces out. The prints were all very straightforward, except for the tiny cabinets on the very edges. But more on that later. So right goes onto the right, left goes onto the left. First lesson I learned really early on is to label all the things you're printing in the right spots. I did make some holes here in order to screw in things with the bottom since they are split here, but technically I don't own this condo, so I'd rather not drill any holes in solid wood when I don't have to. So what I instead opt to do is use 3M tape. Do you still see like kind of a mark here? Where there's kind of a definitive line between the bottom and the top. But this is okay. I'm pretty sure I can use, I don't know, some kind of tape or something to tie this apart. And like I said, at the very least, this way in case the landlord doesn't like it, you can just take them off. Don't be bothered because it's just tape. But like I said, there is that one line where you can definitively see that there is something holding it all together. Now that this part is done, we have cabinet number 1. It says right, which means it goes on to the right. Well, that's something I never expected. Okay, so we have a problem. As it turns out, this part isn't straight. That is a problem. I actually took that out, and now it's perfectly. And this slides kind of nicely. As for these pieces, these are only detachables. I didn't have to break anything to get them off, so can they fit in here? No, they can't. I'll keep these pieces safe, and in case the landlord wants to get rid of all that and put these back, she could. These are kind of clips in, so she can basically take off my drawers here and then put this part just on by clipping it all into place. So that was the right piece completed. After that, very similarly, I finished the left side as well. After the left cabinet, it was time to work on the middle cabinets, and unfortunately, this was when I would run into my first design flaw. The way that I designed this, I forgot to account for the brackets from the inner side of the wall. So I had to put these in, but this is kind of an afterthought because I had already printed one of these with that mistake already in place. To fix that, I simply used a Dremel to cut that part out. I knew I forgot something. Oh well, I have to cut this part off then. One thing to note here is that I was printing each piece and installing them as it goes. This way, if I made a mistake, I could correct it into the next print I was going to make. While I was clearing up this mistake, at the back of my head, I was thinking how the holders that were attached to the bottom of the cabinets were kind of a waste of filament. They could have been easily hollowed out and still be functionally the same. So, as I was printing, I realized I was running low on filament, and to help with that problem, I basically cut 2 gigantic holes into the top parts of the small left cabinet and the small right cabinet. This was much more just cheapy on a filament, really. Okay, time to put this on. Okay, so we encountered another problem, and I think I know what's the cause of this as well. This is the right small on the side of the cabinet, and I've used the very end of the giant arm glow yellow. And the problem is this, at the very end of the row for the giant arm glow yellow, the filament wasn't doing very well. It was not sticking to the bed, it was having trouble adhering, and I had to restart the initial print 4 times after cleaning it with soap, after cleaning it with alcohol, doing all of that again and again and again before it actually got a good first layer. I'm not sure if it just got a really bad batch, but long story short, at the end of the roll for the giant arm glow yellow, the filament quality started to get really bad, and now we have warping. So this is actually not a perfect hexagon anymore, whereas the other ones kind of went in directly. This one is having trouble getting in at all. So anyways, here is my method of fixing all of these issues. Maybe a tiny bit more. A bit easier on this side for sure. One more pass with the heat gun, and then let's see if I can just make it work with some oil. I don't think I have a heat gun anymore because any more proportion out of shape, it actually might make it even worse than it actually started with. So, and still with quite a lot of difficulty. On the other side, much better on this side. I think it's this edge that's having a little trouble. So let me see if I can just burr it down a little bit. That is the warping caused by, I think, just mainly the bed layer adhesion from using the old filament of the giant arm from Glow One. And now, after being oiled up completely, let's hope this works at least a little bit better. It's still troublesome. Comment below if you think running this through itself 10 times will actually make this easier. Is this a method to actually make things work? But it's working here. But this was, I could not do this 5 minutes ago. So one more thing to note is that there's a little bit of elephant trunk here. I think the bed might have been a little bit too hot, but that was intentional specifically because, like I said, bed adhesion was actually horrible with this one. So I guess there's a little bit of warping everywhere. Anyhow, I used a bit of soapy water to just clean this area off a little bit. I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'll put the adhesives. I believe we are ready to go. So this is the last piece, and this is the corner piece as well. And I printed this one mistakenly with supports, which absolutely didn't do anything at all. If anything, it just kind of made this part a little more rugged. You can tell there's a lot of unevenness, and that's because really late in the morning, my printer started beeping at me saying it ran out of filament. And I realized that I didn't have enough to actually print the last piece. I used up the other glow-in-the-dark filament that had some similar qualities and figured that that would make it go all the way. That was also not the case. So what did I end up with? Oh, you can kind of tell here. There's a distinct line transitioning from the other one I used and the new one that I used. Okay, now some good news. Unlike the other pieces, this last piece that's meant to be attached to wood, I actually printed standing up, whereas the other ones I printed sitting down. And that's because this was actually small enough to print both the left and right at the same time. All of these pieces can fit onto the Prusa MK3S Plus perfectly, except for the small ones. The small ones can actually both fit onto the MK3 Plus as one print. As you come to see, that was a horrible mistake because I did not account for warping being such an issue
with the filament that I was using. So when every single one of these came out, these 4 were looking really good, and these 2, because they were printed standing up instead of lying down, they actually had tons of warping towards the end of the print.
Last piece is done. Good to go. Final piece done. The main cabinet, it's done. Here is the final product. From the top, nothing can be seen. From the bottom, everything's in place. Some of you might be wondering why I didn't do this in black, as it might look better. Well, I thought it would have looked really cool if we had glow-in-the-dark cabinets, but these have not been glowing at all. Nonetheless, it's a custom build because it's hard to find furniture that specifically just fits this particular piece, and this is kind of the only way we're gonna get there. I'm pretty happy with this. Definitely could have been better. The last thing is, there were supposed to be pieces here on the inner side that was from the initial piece that held this. We had to take that off, so now there's just kind of a gap over here. I do plan on printing something to hold this in place. So that's probably the last thing we do today. As long as we don't put anything too heavy in here, I think it will stay. If you're wondering what I already put in here, these are just some towels, so very lightweight. This one is more towels, also very lightweight. And this one I have some gloves, and this one is currently empty. And this one I have some chargers, nose spray, and sewing kit. And then this one, this is the one we just put in. It's gonna be for very, very small stuff. Yeah, this one still needs a little bit of work. There was another reason why I wanted to print these. That's because we had friends over who are around my height, and as soon as they lean back, they hit their head on the marble, and it hurts like hell. But now, they'll hit their head on the plastic part, and this doesn't hurt nearly as much. You know, prevent people from hitting their heads on the back of our counter here. It's out of the way. It's kind of nice. And finally, we have one piece that fits right here. And that will block it off from looking weird. And it's a decent fit. And similarly on the other side as well. Here is the final product.